All right, buckle up, because things are getting really interesting in Philly. The Eagles are right in the thick of trade season, and the rumors swirling around are absolutely wild. We're talking about some real blockbuster names being floated out there, and multiple reports are now connecting the Eagles to some serious firepower, especially on the edge and at cornerback. But while the trade buzz has fans excited, there's also a bit of anxiety in the air after a surprise update on one of the team's star players that might raise a few eyebrows. And through all of this noise, Jalen Hurts continues to quietly play some of the best football of his career, MVP-level stuff that not enough people are talking about. So, let's dive into everything going on with this team right now, because Philly is not just trying to make a playoff push, they're going all in. Now let's start with the trade rumors, because that's where things are getting juicy. Even though the Eagles already brought back veteran Brandon Graham to solidify that defensive edge rotation, and with Nolan Smith expected to return after the bye week, there's still this sense that General Manager Howie Roseman is cooking something up. And when Howie starts making calls, you know something big could be coming. The first major report comes from ESPN, and it's caught a lot of attention. Teams around the league are reportedly circling the Miami Dolphins, who are struggling with just one win so far this season. The thinking is that the Dolphins might start moving pieces before the deadline, and that includes pass rushers like Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips. Now, Matthew Juden's name is also being thrown into the mix, although that's more of a wild card. But let's stick with Chubb and Phillips for a second, because both make a lot of sense for Philly. Chubb has been the most productive of the bunch, but he'd also be the toughest to acquire in terms of trade value. Phillips, on the other hand, is younger, has flashed serious upside, and would likely come cheaper. He's got that twitchy athleticism and length that the Eagles love on the edge. Juden, if anything, would be a low-cost depth move, not the splashiest option, but a vet who brings leadership and could still give you solid reps in a rotation. But wait, it gets even better. The name that's got Eagles fans buzzing the most right now is Trey Hendrickson. According to reports, multiple teams have been making calls to the Bengals about Hendrickson as we approach the deadline. Now, Cincinnati is publicly saying they're not shopping him. And yeah, maybe they're not actively trying to move him. But if the right offer comes in, never say never. And here's where it gets even more interesting. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler just dropped a list of the top 25 trade deadline targets across the NFL. Guess who's number one? Yep, Trey Hendrickson. Fowler even gave him a 20% chance of being traded and named the Eagles as a potential fit. Now, is that based on real insider info or just educated speculation? Hard to say, but when you combine that with other buzz and the Eagles' recent track record at the trade deadline, it definitely feels like something's brewing. And Hendrickson's not the only name on that list tied to Philly. Jermaine Johnson from the Jets also popped up, ranked number 10 overall with a 35% chance of being moved. The Jets reportedly aren't dying to deal him, but of their young edge rushers, he's more available than someone like Will McDonald. Johnson would be an exciting pickup, young, explosive, and a guy who could grow into a bigger role. Then there's Arden Key from the Titans. He was ranked number 13 and given a 40% chance of being traded. Key is in the final year of his contract, and Tennessee seems open to moving players they don't see as part of their long-term future. Out of all the edge rushers being mentioned, Key might actually be the most realistic for the Eagles. He's productive, affordable, and wouldn't cost as much as a guy like Hendrickson or Chubb. But let's not forget about the secondary, because if there's one area on the Eagles' defense that needs attention, it's cornerback. And here's where things start to get really spicy. One of the most intriguing names floating around is Seahawks cornerback Rick Woolen. This guy was ranked number 4 on Fowler's list and was given a massive 50% chance of being traded, the second highest odds on the entire list. Apparently, league executives think the Seahawks have been quietly trying to move him for a while now. That's huge. Woolen is an athletic freak, 6'4" with blazing speed, and despite some inconsistencies in coverage, he's already racked up 11 interceptions and 30 pass breakups early in his career. That's insane production. The Eagles desperately need a solid CB2, and if Christian Parker can work with Woolen and help him develop his technique, the sky's the limit. This would be one of those high-risk, high-reward moves that could completely transform the secondary if it pays off. Another corner linked to the Eagles is Cam Taylor-Britt from the Bengals. Fowler gave him a 25% chance of being traded. He's a younger guy, only 26, but has found himself falling out of favor in Cincinnati. He was even a healthy scratch last week, which is never a good sign. Still, he's had 7 interceptions and 15 pass breakups over the last 2 seasons, and he could be a solid fit in Vic Fangio's zone-heavy scheme. Not as flashy or exciting as Woolen, but definitely a name to watch. A move for him would be more about depth and fit rather than upside. And get this, Fowler also listed the Eagles as a possible destination for Ravens tight end Mark Andrews. He was number 6 on the list with a 20% chance of being moved. Now, that one feels like a stretch. Andrews is one of the best tight ends in the league, and while Philly could use help at the position, this just doesn't feel realistic. It would be a shocker if Baltimore actually moved him, but it does show that the Eagles are being mentioned a lot, which tells us something about how active Howie Roseman might be right now. One name that probably won't be coming to Philly, despite all the fan chatter, is Max Crosby. There was a report earlier in the week that the Cowboys had reached out to the Raiders about Crosby. That, of course, set off a firestorm of speculation. But right after that came word that the Raiders had met with Crosby personally to reassure him that they weren't shopping him and that both sides want to stay together. So, at least for now, it looks like Crosby isn't going anywhere. Still, this is the NFL. Things can change fast. And when it comes to a team like the Raiders, who are clearly in a rebuild mode, you never really know. So yeah, the trade buzz is loud right now in Philly. Whether it's the edge, the secondary, or even some surprise position like tight end, you can feel something coming. But that's only one part of the story, because while all this is going on, Jalen Hurts has quietly been putting together one of the best stretches of quarterback play in the entire league. The guy just doesn't get enough credit nationally, and it's honestly wild. Since week 3, Hurts ranks top 5 in basically every major statistical category for quarterbacks. Touchdown to interception ratio, he's 3rd. Offensive touchdowns, 4th. Passing touchdowns, also 4th. He's 5th in yards per attempt, 5th in total offensive yards, 5th in passer rating, and on and on. In fact, he's got the highest passer rating through 7 games in Eagles history. That's not just good, that's elite. And yet, the national narrative seems to be completely missing it. The crazy part is, he's doing all this while dealing with constant questions about the offensive scheme, the running game, and a banged-up offensive line. And yet, he keeps delivering. The Eagles are sitting at 5 wins, and a huge part of that is Jalen Hurts playing smart, efficient, and explosive football. The MVP race is wide open this year, and if he keeps this up, there's no reason Hurts shouldn't be right in the thick of that conversation. He's putting the team on his back, staying composed under pressure, and making the kinds of plays that win games in the postseason. And again, he's doing it while the offense is still figuring things out. That said, one area where things clearly haven't clicked yet is the run game. And even Saquon Barkley, who was supposed to be a key piece in transforming this rushing attack, admits it's been frustrating. But what's interesting is how optimistic he still is. Barkley said he feels physically great and is confident that once the team finds its rhythm on the ground, things are going to get scary. He praised the offensive line for their pride and commitment to getting it right, and basically said it's just a matter of staying patient and trusting the process. And honestly, that's great to hear. But at some point, it's got to show up on the field. The run game hasn't been nearly good enough, and that's something that has to change if the Eagles want to make a real Super Bowl push. Predictable play calling and lack of execution have been issues, and while Barkley isn't the problem, this team needs to do a better job putting him in positions to succeed. Maybe this is the week that finally happens. Or maybe the Eagles are still a move away from truly unlocking their potential. Either way, the pressure is on, and something has to give. Now let's shift the focus to something that could potentially derail all this momentum: injuries. Because as much as the Eagles look like a team ready to take another shot at a Super Bowl, the health of a few key players is already starting to create some real concern. And at the top of that list is A.J. Brown. The update that dropped this week completely caught fans off guard. Brown missed practice on Wednesday with what's now being called a hamstring injury. And yeah, on the surface, it might not sound like a huge deal. Guys miss practice all the time. But this isn't just any player, and this isn't just any injury. There were no signs during the Vikings game that he was dealing with anything serious, which makes this all the more surprising. But when it comes to hamstrings, it's rarely simple. These are injuries that tend to linger. They limit explosiveness, they flare up without warning, and worst of all, they're hard to manage in a long season. For a guy like A.J. Brown, whose game is built around speed, physicality, and explosion after the catch. This is something that could have a major impact if it isn't handled perfectly. And let's not forget, this isn't the first time AJ has dealt with hamstring issues. He missed multiple games last season because of it, and he missed time again during training camp this year for the same reason. So whether this is a flare-up of the same problem or a brand new issue, it raises some major red flags. The fact that he didn't practice at all to start the week could be a precaution, sure, but it's also entirely possible the team is being extra careful because they know how tricky these injuries can be. If Brown isn't able to go against the Giants this week, or worse, if this turns into a multi-week absence, the Eagles are going to feel that in a big way. He's the heartbeat of the passing attack, a guy that stretches defenses, opens up the middle for other receivers, and creates matchup nightmares every time he lines up. This passing game was just starting to click in a serious way, and to lose your top weapon now? That would be brutal. And it's not just A.J. Brown that's banged up. Wednesday's injury report had more than a few names on it, and not in a good way. Adoree Jackson wasn't at practice, and while his absence was somewhat expected, it still puts even more pressure on a cornerback room that's already had its fair share of instability. Cam Jurgens, Azeez Ojulari, and Jeremiah Tarter Jr. were also missing, though none of those are shocking at this point. The real issue is how thin the Eagles are getting at key positions, especially along the offensive line and in the secondary. Depth only goes so far, and the more you rely on backups, the more the cracks start to show. That's why trade rumors at both cornerback and edge make even more sense now. This team can't afford to wait and hope guys get healthy. They need reinforcements. FlyEaglesFly News family, smash subscribe and hit like. Your support keeps the freshest Philadelphia Eagles updates flying in. Drop your take in the comments, and let's talk birds. In a move that has sent shockwaves through the NFL, whispers around Philadelphia suggest that the Eagles' latest signing, Jordan Love, might just be the spark the franchise needs to dominate the NFC East. While official statements remain scarce, insiders hint that Love's arrival could revolutionize the team's offensive strategies, injecting a level of unpredictability that opponents may struggle to contain. The timing of this rumored acquisition couldn't be more dramatic. Just as the division's power dynamics were starting to feel set in stone, the Eagles appear to be quietly reshaping the landscape. Love, known for his rocket arm and mobility, has long been viewed as a potential game-changer. Yet, skepticism has followed him through his career, with critics questioning whether he can deliver under pressure. Philadelphia, however, seems ready to bet big, suggesting that team executives are envisioning a future built around his unique skill set. Rumors circulating in league circles suggest that internal meetings have been buzzing with talk of offensive schemes designed specifically to maximize Love's strengths, pairing him with playmakers who can turn even the tightest coverage into explosive plays. Fans and analysts alike are already speculating on the ripple effects. Could this be the season the Eagles reclaim the NFC East crown? Some insiders whisper that rival teams are bracing for a sudden shift in the balance of power, with the Cowboys, Giants, and Commanders now facing an unexpected and potentially unstoppable contender. Meanwhile, social media chatter shows Eagles fans oscillating between cautious optimism and unrestrained excitement, flooding timelines with predictions, memes, and hopeful takes. Of course, none of this has been officially confirmed beyond the murmurs, but ESPN sources report that negotiations have reached an advanced stage, fueling speculation that the Eagles are preparing for a bold statement to the league. If Love steps onto the field and lives up to the hype, Philadelphia might just be witnessing the dawn of a new era, a seismic shakeup of the NFC East that could redefine rivalries and rewrite playoff expectations for years to come. Whether this is a masterstroke or a gamble, one thing is certain. The NFL landscape is buzzing, and all eyes are now on Jordan Love and the Eagles. That's a wrap from FlyEaglesFly News. If you want the fastest Eagles updates, subscribe, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Sound off in the comments. Let's talk birds.